All right, thanks everybody for joining. There are a few people here that are new, and that's great. I'm Dr. Jeff Hummel. I've been with Illumacell, I would say, for concentrated full-time type efforts on the clinical side of things for 2 years. I've known the team a little bit longer than that and have been active with them longer than that. But really, my attraction to Illumacell and the technology that Kerber developed was that I have an extensive background in cancer research, both at the academic level as well as the clinical professional level in getting startups clinical traction and rigorous data collected so that they can engage in early clinical phase studies. And Michael kind of touched on that briefly there. So I'm just going to try to go through a few slides that'll go into more detail about our clinical development and the programs that we've engaged in and the progress we've made in the last year, despite all the hurdles, and they'll come up. I'll try to keep this brief. Michael just touched upon some stuff that I have in my deck here, and I'll try to just skim over them. If you have any questions, feel free to stop me, and I'll just continue on there. So really, actually, I can't see that. I'm going to minimize this. There we go. So why Illumacell? Why now? I am not trying to be flippant here when I say cancer sucks. Illumacell appreciates this. Obviously, everybody here appreciates this. I've been, as I said, 25 years studying this disease, both at the molecular level academically as well as the clinical level. And what I really mean by that is that it's clear to all of us that patients need natural, less toxic ways of beating their cancer. We really need to get rid of the toxic gold standards, or at least complement them. And with Illumacell, as we've discussed, there's patented technology that offers significant therapeutic potential across a whole broad spectrum of cancers. It's non-invasive, meaning that we don't have to cut anybody open to use this technology. We shine the light from the outside in, and it's a natural treatment. The photosensitizers we use are naturally occurring amino acids in the body, and that's at least our platform we've chosen so far. And the thing that separates Illumacell, which really has me intrigued as a scientist and a clinical professional, is that this phototherapeutic energy can be delivered deeper into the tissue than any of our competitors. So really, for me, as a cancer research professional, I feel that Illumacell has the potential to revolutionize PDT, which is photodynamic therapy, and cancer treatment. It could be a game changer for all levels of treatment currently that cancer patients experience. Neoadjuvant is any treatment that's done before first line, and adjuvant therapy is typically referred to therapy that's done after first line has failed. We can impact all these areas. We can help shrink tumors at the neoadjuvant level before first line surgery, as an example. But really, ultimately, this technology could disrupt the gold standard toxic treatments. So really, Illumacell just wants to say no to radical surgery, toxic chemotherapy, toxic radiation. I don't need to go through the numbers, but we spent a large portion, Michael and I, of 2021 researching and going through the addressable markets and the specific markets from the business standpoint. And obviously, it's a huge market with capital appreciation potential in the tens of billions of dollars. So what I'd like to talk about in the next 10 minutes is go through some slides that show our clinical development path over the last year. Obviously, Michael's just touched on that we, I think, have done fairly well in light of many hurdles out there to increase our visibility to investors. They want data. They want clinical data, and it needs to be exciting. And we're getting there. We've achieved regulatory traction, definitely developed a stronger clinical program within the team over the last year. And I'll touch upon the three main areas there, which is our diabetic wound study out in Alberta, a couple special access program approvals that we achieved through Health Canada, and our future advanced skin cancer plans. So one of the things I wanted to highlight right off the bat, and Michael touched upon it, and this is super exciting for clinical work, for Illumacell and for all cancer patients, is that we have actually healed multiple metastatic lesions in the clinic this past year. And for me, that's super exciting. We've obviously continued a buildup of our key opinion leaders and stakeholders and our physician network, which here is key. There is no way that any med tech company, startup or otherwise, can do what they need to do without backup with experts and experts that are well known. So our key opinion leaders and our healthcare professionals. We have a couple med tech executives, one of which I believe is on, both of which I believe are on today. Thanks everybody for participating there. They're both experienced med tech execs, Hummel, Karnik, and Kate Stolman. We've recruited one of the world leading pain experts at my alma mater, McMaster University, in Dr. James Henry, and he's helped with some of the clinical experiences patients. He's helped our team mitigate some of the pain that patients experience during Illumacell treatment. Dr. Vlad Gagovsky is one of the pioneers and helped Illumacell early on in a lot of the private clinic and sort of anecdotal evidence that we've treated hundreds of patients with Illumacell PDT. And more recently, some support from an oncodermatologist in Toronto, working at the Toronto Dermatology Institute, as well as affiliations with Princess Margaret Hospital. And this is a key milestone for Illumacell in that this is Princess Margaret Hospital is an internationally renowned cancer institute in both coming up with novel therapies as well as treating patients. And I would be completely remiss to not mention a support of our general practitioners in the St. Catharines, Niagara region, in Dr. Jeanette Laverdiere and Dr. Jin Chung, both of which supported and advocated PDT treatment with our light this year. And we got it in the clinic, we treated patients, and I'll show you some of the results there in the next few slides. So the first area of clinical development that I think needs to be discussed is sort of our wrapping up, if you will, of our Alberta trial. It's a PBM study, or a photobiomodulation study, where we were treating open chronic wounds in diabetic patients for the most part, leg and foot ulcers. And if those of you who are around for the last two AGMs and discussions, it's really was developed early in my tenure with Illumacell as a pilot study and a safety study at that, to really gain some traction with Health Canada for approval for commercialization. Now we've since switched gears, I'll get to that in a minute, but it's still an important study and shows that largely supported by CAR and the Alberta Health Services, that these lights are safe. We started that study in 2020, and it's currently ongoing. It is approved regulatorily, and we filed this year a renewal. There's our identifier there for the Health Research Ethics Board renewal that's the University of Alberta, I believe. And we've updated the clinicaltrials.gov identifier, which is that's an international website that's used for all clinical trials ongoing or proposed. And you can get all the details of this trial at that site. Last year, I reported that we had completed 14 patients of our proposed 60. And this year we were able to complete 18 more under the hurdles of COVID largely, for a total of 32. And so right now we've currently suspended active enrollment here in favor of an interim data analysis, which Robert and I on the team are pushing to get some publication worthy data collected and analyzed. So really, what was our health services experience out in Alberta? I mentioned the holdups. They were companies wide, not just Illumacell specific. COVID really did halt for us and everybody else any clinical and hospital activities that were not related to COVID. And that's understandable, but it made doing clinical studies very difficult. But we still pushed through. We had some very dedicated efforts by Dr. Eric Bly out there, who was our sponsoring physician. And he got us to the total number of patients of 32, which the team basically decided that's a good place for us to stop, focus on an interim report. We've got 22 patients that were treated. We have 10 that were under the mock arm, which were untreated. And this sort of little flow chart here just basically tells the story of, after almost 2 years of going, with the ongoing restrictions at the Alberta Health Services, the resources have been pulled from Dr. Bly. He has no support, plus COVID, plus the fact that Illumacell is starting to shift its focus and narrow it down to using PDT with the large light, really just gave us the conclusion that we really should just wrap this up, write a report, and see if we have enough for submission to Health Canada, which is really important because it will allow us to prove safety with some of these lights and probably lead to some commercialization and revenue. This is just an example of how this data is parsing out for us. So it's rigorous clinical data. It's reported, recorded. It's been migrated to our databases. It's basically the primary objective of the study was to prove light safety, which is what I mentioned. We've definitely got the green light there, pun intended, both in the pain. From a safety perspective, we're looking at pain pre and post treatment. We're looking at any unwanted skin changes due to the light, and any time the wound gets worse after the light treatment. And we saw none of this. So the light will very likely pass through Health Canada approval for safety. We're still not sure about the secondary objective because the data is still under a bit of a red question mark there. We haven't parsed the data, but this is kind of what it's going to start looking like. This is an ideal patient in the study, patient 10, where you have a significant wound on the shin bone of a diabetic patient, was not healing, would have probably healed at some rate with standard care, but the addition of the light, you can see that it shows a nice drastic reduction in size over a number of days of treatment and visits to the clinic. So that's kind of what we are trying to put together for all 32 patients in the study. The second area, which we developed in 2021 and the latter part of 2020, was the special access pathway, or we're calling it our program, in conjunction with Health Canada. Now, this is a very significant clinical focus for Illumacell because it's PDT with 5-ALA. As I mentioned, that's our photosensitive drug that's a natural amino acid. Over the course of the last 2 years, we have had a roadblock with that photosensitive drug in its safety profile. It wasn't approved except for in Europe. But recently in the EU, as I just mentioned, the FDA as well as Health Canada have approved this drug now for clinical use in other indications. And that, I'll steal the term, it's not the correct term, but it gives us freedom to operate in off-label uses because it's approved worldwide pretty much. The special access, or SAP, is a compassionate care option. So basically this allows any physician who is willing to try this treatment on one of their patients, a one-time sale, if you will, of med tech that is unapproved. And so again, without the support of Dr. Jeanette Laverdiere and specifically Dr. Jin Chung, we would not have been able to do this. And it's led to excellent traction with Health Canada, as well as some very encouraging clinical results, both in breast, and one of the patients was a pancreatic cancer patient. This looks busy. I'll just quickly go through it. I just wanted to review both patients that basically touches on a milestone for us in the clinic. We have Illumacell PDT approved in the clinic, and this is a huge milestone for the company and traction. One of the patients was, here's the Health Canada approval identifier, was an advanced pancreatic cancer patient with extensive liver metastases. There was only palliative care options left, and Illumacell treatment under this program, the SAP program, commenced on February 18th, 2021. This patient received 5 treatments and championed through them, but deteriorated very quickly from aggressive disease, and the treatments had to be stopped at the time. The second patient under this arm of our program was a breast cancer patient, and she also was late stage advanced with many metastases on her spine, all the way up from her neck, rather, all the way down to her sacrum tailbone. This patient refused chemotherapy and some of the gold standard treatments for this disease and was starting to get left with no other alternatives. And her treatment commenced at the latter part of 2020 and is still ongoing. She's responding well. And again, a fantastic clinical result seen in the fact that we've been able to resolve several of her metastatic lesions. So the highlights here for us clinically were that both patients here were able to report feelings and sensations deep in the body, which is kind of what I'd mentioned earlier that separates Illumacell and our med tech from some of the other light device companies. And it's really important that we make note of that, because they're feeling something happening during treatment, often in the way of pain or stabbing, deeper at the tumor targets. The drug itself that we use does cause some nausea and pain associated with the treatments, but they're very short-term effects, usually resolving within a couple hours or a day. And of particular note, 30+ treatments have been given to this breast cancer patient in our program, and metastatic lesions have been resolved. I think before I move on, because I know Wendy is here, I would like to say I don't think it's inappropriate to say that we all knew, most of us knew this particular patient. He was a beloved husband, father, grandfather, I'm not sure, Wendy, but I'd like to take a moment to honor Tom, who has passed in 2020.
Wendy says thank you. Yeah, Tom was one of the first ones to invest in the company and stood behind me right in the very beginning. And he was a great guy. That
is for sure. So the third arm to focus on that we did in 2021 was kind of to retool a little bit. And that is an important thing because, as many of you know, early on, and even when I came to Illumacell, there was a huge focus on anything we could treat. And we can treat a lot of different diseases. It's very true. But why would we switch or try to focus on advanced skin cancers? Well, it's pretty clear after talking with the team over and over again and developing that network with the dermatologists. This is a cancer, advanced skin cancers. This is an indication within cancer. It represents for sure low-hanging fruit. And what we mean by that is that it has a high chance of clinical success, and we have now easy traction and SAP access. We now have a network of dermatologists ready to go. And given what Illumacell is today, even from when I started with the company, we need to be focused on what we can do versus what we want to do. I'm hoping that my tenure here will be long and that we will get the funding and that we can start doing great things in many indications. But the advantages with skin cancer is that dermatologists are already the gatekeepers, if you will, between the general practitioners and the oncologists. What I mean by that is that dermatologists are a specialization that allows them to treat cancer patients as long as they're not too advanced. Once they get too advanced, they get referred to an oncologist. And so they're extremely familiar with PDT, which is our game. They currently use 5-ALA in their clinics topically. They're very receptive to the applications that our PDT can be used for. And as Michael pointed out, skin cancers can be cured by PDT, just not the deeper ones. So enter Illumacell. So we've started to focus on that. This is just some of the basics. I'm not going to go into all the numbers. Let's just say there's a lot of cases of skin cancer diagnosed every day in North America. It's basal cell carcinomas, squamous cell carcinomas, it's melanomas, and there's hundreds of thousands of invasive advanced cases per year. There's lots of dermatologists in the US. The number of registered dermatologists in Canada that I could find was about 700, which isn't bad. When you combine it all, it represents about an $88 million underserved subset market in skin cancer. And really the only options these patients have are surgery, which can be radical, skin grafting, and amputations. Illumacell obviously wants to fix that. So the summary here is that we've suspended our diabetic foot wound study out in Alberta with the goal of a concentrated interim data analysis to get a solid publication leading towards safety approval with Health Canada and some commercial potential. The special access program is ongoing. We have had relative success treating some of these advanced cancers and really want to focus on some future skin cancer SAPs. Again, it just highlights our regulatory approval traction we've gained over the last year. Clinical success treating this breast cancer patient. As a cancer researcher, I find it incredibly amazing and an excellent milestone. 30 plus safe treatments with no adverse events for that patient. We're drafting a study report or a case report on her for publication as well. And we're trying to push a skin cancer SAP with Dr. Sauter at PMH. And that just really leads into our future work in the clinic, which would be an advanced phase 1 skin cancer study, FDA channels or Health Canada channels. And as Michael said, we just really need that first seed of funding. So on that, I'd like to stop, entertain any questions, and thanks for listening to those slides.